So the founders thought this thing through, and they said, you know, we really need to take care of the poor because it's a what? It's a command of the Creator to take care of your fellow man. Didn't we discuss that in natural law? That's the glue that holds society together, to care for one another. So how are we going to do it? Dr. Skousen has attributed an interesting word to this. He calls it calculated compassion. All right, we're going to think this through. We want to help the poor, but how are we going to do it? We're going to calculate our approach to this so that it will really help them and not harm them. So, here's their formula. Do not help the needy completely. Merely help them to help themselves. Do you believe in that? Oh, yeah? Nobody's going to let anybody starve or go without shelter. Do not help them completely, though. They'll get dependent on it. Okay? Here's another one. Give the poor the feeling of earned achievement. What did we just say about that? In other words, always tie what to what? Always tie the receipt of money to some work, so that a young person always has that connection in their mind. All right? Here's another one. Allow the poor to climb the appreciation ladder. What happens if you take a family from a tent and put them in a mansion? What will the mansion become? Like a tent. So you've got to build people's appreciation ladder. So you go from tents to what? Maybe cottages to comfortable houses, and so forth. This is the calculated approach to compassion. It's great, isn't it? And then finally, do not prolong help to the point where it becomes habitual. That's very easy to do nowadays in the affluence that we have, to just give somebody something. And I just find it interesting, this food stamp program that the federal government has. Do you realize today that 1 out of every 10 people in America is on food stamps? And you used to have to go down and get your food stamps. Guess what you do now? You have a little card, it's like a credit card. And they just put money into your account at the beginning of every month. No way. Oh yeah. It used to be you could actually watch somebody buy goods with food stamps. Can't hardly, you use the credit card. Don't know whether it's a credit card, debit card, food stamp card, whatever. It's amazing. This is habitual tactics here. And of course they wind up voting usually for people who what? Who promote the welfare, promote the food stamps. Have you heard the recent food stamp commercials? Doesn't that amaze you? Well, anyway, the founders would say, in helping people, what we need to do is enforce a scale of fixed responsibility. I want to know if you agree with this here as we go through this last part. Who is the most important person to look after one's welfare? Yourself. You are the #1 person responsible for your welfare. And if that fails, if you can't do it, who's next? Your family, right? Let's face it, there are times when you and I could not help ourselves, right? And we were lucky to have a mom and a dad and kind of have that protection of the family, everybody helping as we were growing up and learning and so forth. That's just great, isn't it? Or if you become a little debilitated, you become incapable of working, you're sick or something, it's a family, extended family. Great resource. But what if the family has a difficult time caring for you and giving you help and so forth? Who's next? The founders would say well, we've already talked, family would be the extended family. Who else would be there to help? How about people that you do things with often? Your church. People who believe the way you do. Wouldn't they be the most interested in your welfare? Turns out to be they are. Your church. Do you know that in colonial America, that was the highest level of welfare that really most of the time needed to be given? If you can't provide for yourself or you have some accident, your family, if your family can't do it, then those who worship with you would help take care of you. That solved most welfare problems. What do you think? But if you don't go to a church that has a program in place, or if resources need to be broadened a little bit, where would you go then? Your community. People who live around you, who would also care for you. You may have a community food bank or, whatever. I'm convinced, folks, that most welfare programs would stop at this level, if not before, if we did it right. But let's assume there's a big catastrophe hit a community. Who might have to help? Even before that? The county. The county. Most counties have emergency preparedness programs and county hospitals and so forth to help. County. Now let's just assume there was a major tragedy and the county couldn't provide. Where would they go? The state. And the founders, folks, get this now, said the state is really the highest level that should be involved in welfare. And they said very specifically, you do not ever look to the general or federal government for welfare. They have very specific duties assigned to them, which are in the Constitution, we'll go over. And it does not include welfare. We'll even talk about the General Welfare Clause if you think that might encompass this, but it doesn't. That's been so completely misunderstood. The founders said never let the federal government be involved in this kind of personal welfare to the people. You understand that? So then we come to the end of our discussion, which is the seventh principle, which says the proper role of government is to protect equal rights, not distribute equal things. What a great concept. Wish our legislators would know this, because instead of 1,200 bills a year being introduced in our state government, you probably only have 300 or 400, because so many of them deal with this kind of redistribution of things.